Greetings and salutations. This is Abe Abdelhadi with The Bitter Truth. We'll may not have all the answers, but we're going to ask an awful lot of questions. You can also visit us at thebittertruth.info and, support the show there. We genuinely appreciate it. You can also listen to us for free on Spotify, iTunes, all the stuff, all the places that you listen to these things at. But again, the support is genuinely appreciated. As you probably know, we don't take a lot of any advertising actually, so it's just kind of is what it is. But your support helps us out, and that's something that we greatly appreciate. I mean, why give your money to PBS when they're just going to give you the National Petroleum Radio version of everything that MSNBC does, because that's just what they do. Listen to the end of any public radio show or any PBS news hour, and it's like this really cool voice that goes, generous donations provided by the Ford Foundation. They expect something back, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And it's really amazing that they just interviewed Bill Gates for like an hour about the vaccine and that he's monopolizing. And he doesn't even have a degree in medicine. In fact, he's a college dropout. But no. Let's talk to him about COVID. I'm already digressing and I'm just getting started. So I'm from Austin, Texas. Let me give you a little backstory as to why I'm doing this one today. Just came out of the snowstorm that we had last week, and people from Michigan and Minnesota and everywhere else probably look at us and go, you bunch of pussies. The difference, however, is we lost electricity, and like half the state had no power. And pretty much almost all of the state had no water because the pipes froze. And I won't hold necessarily the freezing pipes responsible for what I'm going to talk about today, but definitely the electric grid and all that crap. We'll get into that here in a second. But so my experience was I just got the water back on today, and thankfully I had power, which means I had heat because I don't have a gas heater. I have an electric heater. So I was able to sort of fake the not having water for a little bit, because I could at least, watch movies or, play on my computer and email and try to pretend I was working a little bit. Despite the 2 or 3 times a day I had to go forage for snow like a settler. And, in buckets and pots to have water to flush the toilet, because it's, I don't care how white the snow looks. It's dirty. It's loaded with leaves and soot. You can't wash with it. You can't cook with it, but it's good for flushing toilets. And thankfully, because I'm from LA, which is why I don't understand why Texans don't do this. You all supposed to be so tough. And I'm supposed to be that pussy liberal from California. Well, fuck you. I had water, because we've only survived every earthquake known to man, brush fires. I personally was evacuated twice. We had the Santa Ana winds 2 or 3 times a winter at 50, 60 miles an hour, knocking out power towers and wires. So we would go a couple of times a winter for 2 or 3, 4 days at a time without electricity. So it was incumbent to have emergency water in the closet. And what is emergency water, pray tell? Those cases of water of 36 bottles that these assholes are selling to you for $50 a pop that cost $2.99 at the store. That's what you do. You buy those. Buy like 3 or more if you have a family. I live by myself. And then, you have like 106 bottles of water. And I was down to 2 cases from the last little emergency we had a few years ago. And I still have a case left. And at the end of the week, when everything gets replenished, I'm going to buy a couple of cases when it's not, panic central. And I'm going to go ahead and have water in the pantry in case this shit happens again. Because guess what? I got to at least drink water. And then finally the roads cleared up on Friday, and I was able to finally go get some ice. And I filled my bathtub with a couple 100 pounds of ice, and I had to drive to different stores to get it because a lot of places had a bag limit, rightfully so. And so, that's how I spent my Friday. And then yesterday I got another 5 bags of ice. And this morning, voila, the water came on. So I had ice in the tub that was going to last me till Wednesday, as far as, washing dishes and flushing the toilet was concerned. And that's, sort of the gritty details in a couple of minutes, but that's exactly what we had to do here. And so let's get into it. Deregulation failed again. And while the Republicans are, sitting there making fun of, windmills and all that shit, the fact is they've been running this crap since W was governor in the 90s. So 25 years of Republican rule. They had a freeze here in 2011. It didn't snow, but it was a freeze. Electricity went out for millions of people. And in a decade, they haven't done one goddamn thing to assess the power grid issue. And since 25% of Texas power comes from windmills and solar, well, that got shot in the ass. So they want to blame windmills and saying, well, see, they don't work. Well, you still had natural gas that couldn't be used. You still had coal-fired plants that couldn't be used because there was no electricity. So they couldn't even, those places couldn't even turn on. And most of those places don't even have an electrical or emergency generator. So again, and why? Why was the power so lacking? Well, and honestly, when you run a private corporation and it's the government, that's what deregulation really is when they do this kind of shit. You basically have the solar buddies and the windmill buddies getting all these fat contracts. And instead of working on, say, I don't know, a couple of more nuclear reactors, which would put people to work in America, we could have clean energy. And if you ever heard my interview with John Schoonover, a nuclear physicist who talked about this specifically, I don't want you to think I'm talking about bombing Japan. I'm talking about nuclear energy, the good side. See, it's like a scalpel. If a doctor has it, it's good. But if Jack the Ripper has it, it's evil. I'm hoping you understand that. So rather than ask, what would Texas do? They blame it on the ghost of the federal government, because Texas had its own grid, and West Texas, El Paso, and places like that didn't have a power issue because they stayed on the national grid. So they had frozen pipes because it was freezing all over the state. And it's Texas. We're not prepared for freeze, really. I mean, it gets down to 15, 20 degrees at night, like a few nights a week during the winter. And then the next week, it doesn't do that. And then the next week, it does do that. So it's not like we have this consistent long freeze, So nobody was really prepared for the pipe issue. And I'm sure moving forward, we probably will be. Like Chicago, or New York, or places that have an infrastructure for that kind of thing. And with climate change, because this is what it is. So when these assholes say, oh yeah, well, it's snowing in Texas, so much for climate change. No, dipshit. The word is change. So when the climate changes, what that means is that it does the opposite of what it's supposed to do. So Texas, which normally doesn't get snow and hasn't had snow like we had since like 1947, we get a half-inch dusting once a year at night. Usually comes around 7, 8 o'clock. And if you're out with your buddies, you're like, oh, hey, look, it's snowing. And by the next day, it's gone. It's 70 degrees the next day, and the snow is all gone, like it never even happened. This was different. The dump we had last month was significant. It happened in the daytime, and it was a good foot of snow. Here, same thing for 2 days, and Monday and Tuesday. And then and the freeze started happening over the weekend. And then by Thursday, we had another snow. And then it was a light snow. And then finally by Friday morning, it stopped. Sun came out and started kind of melting things. You could drive on the roads. It wasn't all pure ice. But all of that to say that now you got assholes like Rick Perry saying that Texas would rather endure this kind of shit than suffer federal regulations. No, asshole. We would rather have a life and have you not get kickbacks from your buddies, along with Joe Biden and formerly Donald Trump and formerly Barack Obama, and start utilizing stuff in this country like other countries do, so that we can have more money to spend on things that we need. Okay. I'm going to get all that crap here in a second. But the winterization, because ERCOT, whatever the hell you want to call the private grid system here. By the way, all of the board members are not from Texas. I think 4 of them live in Canada. 2 of them live in either LA or New York. And then the one guy that lives here is not even the president of the board. But they knew this in 2011 when we had a freeze. But the concept of winterization cost too much. See, now this gets to my thing, and I talk about this all the time. Utilizing things, people freak out and you're saying they call you a communist and a socialist. And quite frankly, most people wouldn't know what a socialist was if one was blowing them, shoving a communist up their ass. So I would recommend anybody that's going to, send me cards and letters to look up what a communist is, look up what socialism is, and know your shit. Quit being a fucking asshole. Seriously. And if I sound a little hot, last night I was at a bar by my pad. I hadn't been there in a few weeks, and ran into a couple of them and had a long discussion about things. And it amazes me how people my age don't know fucking anything. But God damn it, they know baseball scores. They know what happened in Super Bowl 1985. They know that shit. But they couldn't tell you the difference between utilizing resources while we're still paying taxes, by the way, and that gets into this. Because the government's job is not to run a profit. They're not going to lose money. The idea is not to lose money. If you lose money, you lose money. But they're not trying to gouge you. They're not taking your tax dollars and paying subsidies to various industries or buying fucking weapons we don't need to the tune of $1 trillion a year, occupying 150 countries. We have 50 bases in Japan, or I'm sorry, 30 bases in Japan. Why do we have 30 bases in Japan? We don't need 30 bases in Japan. Japan has an army. We don't need to be there. Okinawa, they hate our guts. They protest us all the time. And now we're about to destroy a 3,000-year-old coral reef off the island of Okinawa to make another facility. We're going to fill it full of dirt and make a facility. Why? Because we're assholes. That's why. But as I said, the government's job is not to profit, right? And I'll give you an example. I'm self-employed. I run my own business. That's my day job. And last spring, I was able to qualify for an SBA loan. And maybe I was the wrong guy to give it to, because I'm going to tell you this information. When I called my bank to cover me for a couple of months because I lost some clients and things happened, a lot of people went out of business, sadly. What was interesting was my bank wanted to give me what they called an unsecured loan and charge me 28% on that unsecured loan. I went to the SBA and they gave me a loan at 2.75% with 30 years to pay, with my first payment not due until next month. I've already set it up on auto pay. And what's funny about that is I didn't accrue any interest or penalties for that first year that they gave me the loan. The point of, quote, helping people. Now, I know a lot of small businesses didn't get that lucky. I know a lot of self-employed people didn't get that lucky. One of my clients, big outfit up in Lubbock, got a $3 million PPP loan. His bank wanted to charge him 22%. And this is a guy with 500 employees, a board, and a ton of collateral. The bank still wanted to charge him over 20% interest. The SBA gave him that same loan for 1% interest. Given their income and everything, I know who they are and everything else. So I'm not going to tell you who they are or whatever, or their business. But bottom line, they'll probably have that loan paid back in about 2 years, maybe 3. But at 1%, that's free money, because the government is not making a profit. They're covering their expenses. They're covering the expenses to generate the money, or to process the paperwork, or to pay the workers to process whatever they're doing. They're doing the bare minimum to make just enough money to stay afloat. They're not gouging people, right? And for all the money we gave the banks, that guy shouldn't have been talked to that way. I shouldn't have been spoken to that way. Especially one of my bank accounts I've had 18 years, and neither one of them would even talk to me without being an unsecured loan. So I'm like, well, we gave you guys an unsecured loan. In fact, we gave you money. It wasn't even a loan. We just poured money, $1 trillion a day for how many months last year? But that's my point, though. So this is the running gun battle I have with people on the right, and some people on the so-called left. The corporate Democrat is usually like Joe Manchin. They might be a hipper version of it. They think they're cool. They watch MSNBC. They think they're smart, or CNN or some shit. But they do the same thing where they'll say, "Oh yeah, well, what do you want, a nanny state? We want the government to take care of you." Well, first of all, I don't want the government to do jack shit, but to utilize my money. See, you're paying taxes in this country. Many of you don't realize that. I'll say it again. You pay taxes in this country. So therefore, you're going to expect a bigger bang for your taxpayer dollar. Period. And if you don't expect a bigger bang for your taxpayer dollar, then you're a fucking idiot. You're the kind of guy that walks into a car lot and pays sticker. Or you go look at a car or a Sea-Doo or something, and you just buy, or you just pay what the guy says to pay. You don't haggle, you don't discuss, you don't just, because you don't care. And this is why this country doesn't have nice things. This is why this country is not like the Nordic countries or the EU or the Asian countries that have free education, Medicare for all, a good pension. You know, the argument the right loves to make is that the minimum wage hasn't, you know, if you raise the minimum wage, prices are going to go up. Well, okay, it's $7.25 now. It went up in 2009. From 1987 to 2009, it was $7.09. So in the 34 years that the minimum wage has been under $8, prices have gone up. The minimum wage has not. So why have prices gone up, genius? Why have prices gone up 3, 4, 5, 30 times, 50 times? I say this a million times. I got out of college in 1987. I was paying $100 a quarter to go to Cal Poly Pomona in California. I paid $100 a quarter to go to that school. I got out in 1987. That school is now $6,500 to go to that school. The minimum wage hasn't gone up. So why did school go up? Why are cars 8 times what they used to be? Why are houses 5 and 10 times what they were 30 and 40 years ago? Why? The minimum wage hasn't gone up. So there goes your dipshit excuse. So kindly shut the fuck up on that one. But the point of the taxpayer is to make sure that they get the services they need. And this is where I get into, and this applies to everything, banking, healthcare, name it. And this is where I get into, instead of saying, I don't like the term socialize because it scares the kids, right? And you know, people, they're like horses, they spook easy, right? And so what the word I've been using the last couple of years is to utilize. I call it utilization. Because as much as you like to entertain the fantasy that one day you'll be Jeff Bezos or one day you'll be Elon Musk, well, unless you come from a South African apartheid family that made their money on blood diamonds and everything else that was wrong with South Africa, and that was your seed money to get you into eBay and everything else, and then you finally end up at doing Tesla, which still technically hasn't made any money, but they're making rockets to go to the moon and electric cars out of lithium batteries and cobalt and everything else, which we still need to mine, which has its own pollution issues, which are just as bad as fossil fuels. So he's full of shit. The whole concept is full of shit. And there's a better way to do this to get us into a better state energy-wise. But let's just stay with the fantasy. You're not going to be Elon Musk. In fact, if you make $1 million a year or less, you will never be Elon Musk. You will never be Elon. You'll never be Jeff Bezos. You'll never be Bill Gates. Never, never, ever, ever. I got tons of friends making 6 figures to $1 million a year. And I can not tell you how many of them are not even worth 15 million. Okay. And they've been at it 25, 30 years between raising kids and paying attorneys, paying your mortgage, investing, putting money away. Their net worth is maybe, including the house, 10 to $15 million, maybe 20. It ain't Nancy Pelosi money. It ain't $100 million. It's not Jeff Bezos money. You're never going to be that person. So it would be a good idea for you to side with your class because you're not an owner of production. You're a worker bee. If you make a salary and you don't produce anything, and when I say this, I don't mean, you're the guy who started a CBD company a couple of years back, and you pay temps to come in and pack your shit and ship it out for you. I'm not talking about that guy. I'm not even talking about my client with the 500 employees. He's still a worker bee. If his company fucks up, they ain't getting a bailout. They're not in the bailout category. I've been in employee benefits for a long time. Let me tell you what, nobody is in the bailout category. And the only way you get in the bailout category is if you're rich enough to buy a congressman or a senator or a president, and that's it. But when I talk about utilizing, an analogy I beat to death because it's the only one that kind of makes sense and it's simple, Simon, is the airport. The airports are usually owned by a city, a county, or a state. The airlines don't own the airport. They pay rent at the airport, but they don't own the airport, right? So when United or American or whoever pays rent at Bergstrom International, Austin's airport here, they land the planes, they lease the space, they split. That's why I can fly to LA for $150, less now because of COVID round trip, and they still make money. Now, if the airport was privatized and United owned the airport and American owned the airport, how much do you think that trip to California or New York would cost? $200-$300? Try $1,000, because they're going to bury their costs into the consumer. That's how business generally works, which is why you don't make a business out of everything. Okay. For example, there's not an American car company in this country that should be making cars in Monterrey, Mexico, Vietnam, China. I don't care if it's GM or Ford or whoever. If they're making cars overseas, they should be charged a tariff. If you're going to buy that F9000, powered by elephant tusks, and you're going to scream down the street like an asshole, like I saw some of these guys do during the snowstorm, because I drive a 4-wheel drive. Yeah, dipshit, but you're on 4-wheel brakes. It's called ice, you fucking moron. But you probably didn't get that in school because you're number 1 in self-esteem, but number 90 in science. But there's no reason why that truck shouldn't be the same price as a fucking Jaguar or a Mercedes-Benz, because those cars were made overseas, not in America. And we used to do that in this country until 1961. And that's a whole nother long tail. But bottom line, between 61 and 92, when Clinton came, every president, both parties did this, kept putting their foot more on the gas, foot more on the gas. And then they finally got to the point where by 92, we had 80% of American manufacturing being done overseas. And then Clinton passed what Reagan and Bush couldn't pass, NAFTA, because that was a Reagan and Bush thing that they couldn't pass. But Clinton passed it, right? So when I say utilize, I'm saying to make a utility out of things that we're getting raked for. I pay taxes. At the very minimum, I should be getting a dividend from all these industries that we put money into. I did an episode about a month back about the UBI. Thomas Jefferson called it a freedom dividend. And it's my belief that if you have a social security number in this country, you should be getting a dividend from our GDP. Why is it that the United States taxpayer has put $1 trillion into the pharmacy business since the 1930s? $1 trillion. And yet they can sell a $2 pill to me for $400. Meanwhile, they can't sell that pill for more than $10 or $15 in Australia or Canada or anywhere else, right? Because we've completely deregulated the markets here. So when I talk about utilizing, I'm talking about utilizing oil, utilizing energy, the electrical grid. If you could buy your electricity from a co-op, do it. In Texas, unfortunately, the co-ops have to, subscribe to the ERCOT grid or whatever, unless you're like, out in West Texas where they're still on the national grid. But bottom line, if you can avoid the big private companies or buy it from your city, do that. Banking, we need to get rid of all the banks, period. Just have the credit unions that serve their neighborhoods and a couple of national banks that run the cash. And if you think I'm being a left-winger, if you think the Federal Reserve is federal or has reserves, I don't know what kind of crack you're smoking. And I don't know if it's bound with flour or bleach, but there is no Federal Reserve. It's a privately run banking cartel. That is a fact. It's not the Abe Gazette. So again, instead of watching, whether or not the masked midget singer bachelorette is going to, marry the former millionaire has-been celebrity rehab motherfucker, how about you do a little digging and look for yourself, because that's what the Federal Reserve is. It's banks loaning their money to the government, then borrowing it back at zero interest. That's what they do. And it's incredible, the mental gymnastics that quote unquote make this shit work, which hasn't worked, which is why I'm ranting right now. Healthcare manufacturing, there's no reason why, for example, we have 90 nuclear power plants in this country that power 20% of the country's electricity. Well, if we had a federal jobs program, in addition to retrofitting, say, the entire grid of fucking Texas, and other places like Louisiana, Mississippi, they got hit by this snowstorm. They weren't prepared either, because they did some of the same stupid shit that Texas has been doing for 25 years. Instead of worrying about jobs ever coming back, how about we create a federal jobs program to retrofit all these bridges, to fix these schools? We've got crumbling schools, to fix the roads that we have that are in bad shape. We have a D+ infrastructure in this country. Why not do that? Why not build more nuclear reactors, which we would do in this country? Not in China, not in Mexico, not in Vietnam, not in Korea. Here, United States, we need nuclear reactors. And real quick side note, just so you understand what I'm talking about, not nuclear bombs, nuclear reactors. We got plenty of fucking nukes. We don't need any more. I'm talking about nuclear reactors that when you see the smokestack, it ain't smoke, it's steam, because they just steam out water that cools off the reactors, and then the water's cooled back down and put back into the environment. The biggest challenge with nuclear reactors is the storage of uranium and the spent rods. It's the biggest challenge. But you don't see pipelines breaking. You don't see ships breaking in the middle of the ocean. You don't see millions of people dying every year like they do from fossil fuels. We've had 3 accidents in the last 70 years: Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, and Fukushima. Total number of dead, about 300. And the damage was contained, so it didn't spread throughout the entire country and destroy the country, right? Again, is anything perfect? Not by a long shot. But if we're getting our electricity from nuclear, say, instead of the way we get our electricity, which is natural gas or fracking, and because of fracking, we have 2,000 cities with water worse than Flint. And look up fracking if you don't know what I'm talking about. So there's a reason why we have to start utilizing things, because the profit motive buried into anything is not going to necessarily make it the best business model for a mass of people. Profit motive in a business, I get it. You run a company, you have to make a profit. I understand. But when you make the profit at the expense of people, we had people freeze to death, which they didn't do in West Texas because they had heat and they had electricity. We had people freeze to death here because the power was completely gone. I had friends of mine trying to escape, could not leave town because all the hotels were sold out. An hour out, hour and a half out. You're looking on because it wasn't just Austin; it was the entire state. You want to go south? Great. The people from San Antonio are coming north. You want to go north? Great. The people from Dallas and Waco are coming south. You want to go east? Great. The people from the east are coming west. You want to go west? Great. The people from you get my point. And none of my friends could get a room. I had heat and electricity. Like I said, my only issue was water. But I have friends whose places went down to 35, 40, 45 degrees, and that was it. And they had to sleep in their car to run the heat because they couldn't sleep in the house. And some people died in their car from carbon monoxide poisoning. Right. And these are the things that happen. And this is what happens when you make a profit motive out of everything. This is what happens. There's no reason why we should be paying what we pay for gasoline. We subsidize that industry. And some people argue that the prices are this low because we subsidize that industry. I'm saying nationalize it and the prices would be ridiculously low. There's no reason for Exxon to exist. And before you get all pissy with me, what did the guy leave the business to his dad? No, the guy that runs Exxon is a fucking employee who makes $30 million a year with options and everything else. And Jamie Dimon at Chase Bank, he makes what, 50 million a year? 60 million a year to crash the economy. How about you pay him 10 million a year and pay his workers more, right? Or better yet, how about we take the entire enterprise and nationalize the shit out of it, pay them out their stock options and tell them to go fuck themselves. And that's the end of it, right? That's what I'm talking about. Oil, gas, all of it. Banking, healthcare, the health insurance companies, not a single one of those guys inherited the business from their family, right? They're a fucking employee. There's no reason why that guy that runs Blue Cross should be making 35 million a year while they deny everything. Screw that. This is what I'm saying. You utilize utilities. These are utilities, which every industrialized country in the world does this. There's still businesses in Sweden. There's still businesses in Denmark. There's a ton of business in Japan, but most of their shit is nationalized. Okay. And that's the difference. And that's why those countries have nice things. And we're going to be Brazil in 5 years. And when I mean Brazil, I don't mean we're poor, because Brazil's not poor. They are mineral rich, oil rich, gold rich. They got ore, they got everything. But like here, it trickles up to the top 50 people. And the one guy that tried to socialize it and pull off what Evo Morales or Salvador Allende did back in the day, or Maduro and Chavez tried to do in Venezuela, they put that guy in jail, and he ran for president. He ran for president in jail on these bullshit trumped up charges. He just got out about a year ago, and but he was socializing the country, and poverty was going down. But when poverty goes down, that's because wages are going up. And the traditional capitalist doesn't want wages going up because they're greedy. There's no other way to explain it. You're Jamie Dimon making 50 million a year, and your people barely get to $20 an hour. The fuck is that? Minimum wage in this country should be $25 an hour, period. And before anybody gets into this price is going to go up bullshit, let you know about Denmark. Denmark, minimum wage there is $22 an hour. They have a year of maternity leave. They get 2 months vacation. They have a pension. Oh, and wait for it. The average Big Mac at McDonald's, because that's like a minimum wage job, right? I know what you're going to say. Why should a guy get that much? Flip a burger. Well, I know guys that are trained electrical dudes who make $18 an hour. They should be getting $30 or $40 an hour too. So quit having disdain for people that you think you're better than, because guess what? You're not better than anybody. Because if you were better than anybody, then you wouldn't say that same stupid shit. But you're a dipshit and a cocksucker. I'm going to use that word because I got banned off of Facebook again for another week because I said that Rush Limbaugh was a vile cocksucker, because he was a vile cocksucker. I didn't wish for him to die, but now that he is dead, I don't give a fuck. I'm not going to be nice to a guy that I didn't like because he is dead, but I digress. So all of that to say that the average Big Mac in this country is 27 cents less than in Denmark. So Denmark, with a $22 an hour minimum wage, their Big Mac is 27 cents more on average than the United States. You know, and I don't do McDonald's, but any fast food. If you're going to pay 27 cents more for a burrito or something, and that guy's making $22 an hour and not having to drive Uber on the side or whatever, that's a good thing. And we'll leave you with this. I'm going to cut this short today. But before the pandemic, and this has been going on since the early 80s, but before the pandemic, I think the highest unemployment rate we'd had in the last 40 years was at the end of Jimmy Carter, when I think it was like 11% unemployment. And by 1983, Reagan miraculously got unemployment down to about 6 or 7%. And what his labor secretary did was conflate the military numbers with employment, because before they weren't counting the military. They didn't count that as a job. So, or at least employment. Then they started counting that. And guess who never got rid of that? Nobody. Bush did it. Clinton did it. Bush did it. Obama did it. Trump did it. And so right before the pandemic, Trump was bragging about 4% unemployment. But the big question that never seems to get answered when I ask this question, whether it's the Democrats crowing about Obama's job growth, or the idiot crunchy red people who crow about Trump's job growth, same question. But what kind of jobs? Because before the pandemic, 50% of working Americans, and if the unemployment rate is 4%, which is a lie, but let's just, just for sake of argument, let's just say the unemployment rate was 4%, it means you have 96% of Americans working. Yet of the 50% of those working Americans, they were making under 30 grand a year. Now, 20,000 a year for a family of 4 is called poverty. So half of American workers are making under 30 grand a year, and we were excited about that. And these are mostly people with 2 part-time jobs, so they don't get benefits anywhere. They don't they're probably minimum wage, maybe $10, $12 an hour, maybe 15. But they're a couple of part-time jobs, or they got 1 part-time job and they got a gig thing. They're doing Airbnb out of their house. I'm not disparaging any of the gig work. I mean, if you can do it and it makes you money, I know some people that make a fortune at Airbnbs because they figured out like a strategy, go buy a place or rent a place and then make it Airbnb and blah, 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 blah. But some people just do it in a room in their house because they just need the money. It's not a business for them. They just need the money, and they're working part-time, right? So if you got half the people who have an income of under 30 grand, when the unemployment is supposed to be so low, well, then why is it that 80% of people are living paycheck to paycheck then? Why is that? Why is everyone just going credit mad? We have $1.5 trillion personal credit debt. I'm not talking about student loans. Personal debt in this country is $1.5 trillion. Now, that used to freak me out before until I saw us give Wall Street that in one day. And I'm like, fuck it. Wipe it out. Wipe it out. You've been paying interest long enough. They got their money back. Wipe it out. And if it's a national bank, guess what? They can absorb the losses and then really wipe it out. That's what I'm talking about. You want to really stimulate the economy? You want to stimulate the economy? You give people good paying jobs, real jobs, right? I'm not talking, fucking Taco Bell or whatever. Unless you're going to raise the minimum wage to $25 an hour, then fine. Let them work at Taco Bell. I don't care. But you get people good paying jobs with money to circulate back into the economy where they don't hoard it. They save just enough. They're making enough to save some, pay their car off, pay rent or a mortgage, get out once in a while, get some dinner, take vacations, do some stuff, and not be strapped all the time. And our happiness level in this country, if you've ever seen the surveys, is way low. We got a higher suicide rate than most of the industrialized world. And I know a lot of that is veterans, but Jesus Christ, man, we're doing a lot of things wrong. And when you talk about the veterans, why the fuck are they still? Why did Joe Biden on day 2 send more troops into Syria and still leave the 18,000 contractors that Obama and Trump had put in? I thought he was supposed to be different. And then he doubles down on Venezuela with the $30 million that Trump put in the last COVID bill, saying that Juan Guaido, that fucking twerp, is still the interim president. Dude, I got to tell you right now, and I'm going to start wrapping this up here. These people are not your friends. If you're a hardcore Republican, and I know them, you've been had. And if you're a hardcore Democrat, and I know them, and they say they piss me off even more because they say things like, well, the Democrats represent my values. I'm like, yeah, well, they sure as fuck don't vote on your values. Have you looked at votesmart.org? Have you looked at Open Secrets? Look at what Beto O'Rourke did when he was running for Senate in 2018. You know, my Chewy Blue friends here got pissed off when I pointed out the fact that he voted for banking deregulation 3 times, twice under Trump. Now, for a guy who doesn't take any corporate money, supposedly, which is bullshit, by the way, but so why is he voting for banking deregulation? That's what got us into this mess in the first place in the late 90s. These people are not your friends. Gays, guns, and abortion are all they have you fighting on. Left and right, left and right. It's time to start unifying and punching up. It's time to start unifying and punching up to these motherfuckers. It's time for your politicians to be afraid of you. And I don't mean that Capitol Hill bullshit, okay? I'm talking about real protests. I'm talking about shutting shit down in a real way. It's time for them to be genuinely afraid of you and not, some knothead crap. Like, you know what you want, and not just knocking down a fucking statue or changing the name of a football team, which is not insignificant. But isn't it amazing how BLM almost just, they're gone. They're just gone. They protested in the summer, rightfully so. I was on their side. And then a couple statues got knocked down. I think they changed an army base from a Confederate general's name to another guy. And Redskins don't exist anymore. That's it. That's it. Where are they? Where's the protest? Where's the inconvenience? And then if you pull what Jimmy Dore did a couple months back with the force the vote on the Medicare for All issue, he took a rash of shit for saying, well, you can't be rude to these people. You got to at least be a little polite. This is uncalled for. Fuck you. You ran for office. This is the gig. Make my life better or get another job. Your job is not to be treated like a spirit animal or stroked like a teddy bear in the hands of a toddler. Your job is to make my life better. Short of making my life better, go fuck yourself. Oh, and by the way, I checked with legal. Go fuck yourself is not a threat or an insult. It's merely advice. On that note, you guys, I got to get going. I try to keep it under 40 minutes today. So, and I am so far. And hang on, before I do my big wrap up, I'm going to take a sip of Bloody Mary here. Oh man, that was good. But yeah, so as we wrap up, guys, again, appreciate the support. Go to thebittertruth.info. You can see some blogs there. Connect our episodes. I usually share the YouTube link on that show or on that website, rather, my website. But you can also go on Spotify or iTunes or Podcast Addict or Stitcher, any of the things that you listen to podcasts on, and just type in The Bitter Truth with Abe Abdelhadi, and you can just subscribe there for free and just listen to the shows as we drop them. But then if you want to support the show, go to thebittertruth.info. We've got a Patreon link there. We got some fabulous swag to make your life better. I've got a Venmo with my name. If, there's not a lot of us, so it should be pretty easy to find me. PayPal, which is on the bittertruth.info website there. You can hit the donate button or just type in The Bitter Truth with on PayPal. It'll come right up. And then that being said, appreciate the support, appreciate the ears. And I can talk today. And if this stuff makes you uncomfortable, it's supposed to. Sleep tight.